renewable energy project or a new hospital if there are not adequate roads for people to get around, if they have to worry that there might be sewage flowing through the streets. So critical investments, sir, in infrastructure are also a part of the plan for growth. And while we do not have a large capital program in the next 12 to 24 months as we make sure that we stabilize the economy, we have to make critical investments in that infrastructure. As I close, sir, I want to make reference to one other part of the growth platform. And that has to do with one of the other things that people need and want to see. We have lots of discussions about concessions and incentives, and I won't go into that here today. But the fact is that as we have started to reframe our fiscal incentives framework, that I am sure we will return to this chamber to present to the people of Barbados. The truth is that what is of greater value to investors is the predictability and the speed and the transparency of process that we can guarantee them. It is the reason that we started quickly with the town and country planning legislation and reforming that process. It is the reason that, and you know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I was out over the weekend and a gentleman came to me and said, I sent something in, and he's a developer, I sent something in to town and country planning and it came back out in 4 weeks. I want y'all to continue whatever it is that y'all are doing there. And I want to thank publicly the officers who have been working under pressure to make sure that we can meet the targets that we have set. This government means business. We have to, because we have to look out for the people of this country. But sir, both in the Planning and the New Planning and Development Act and the process and the timelines and the fact that we say that we have a presumption in favor of development, so we're not just regulators, but we're facilitators. In terms of the work that the Finance Division is doing on being able to make online payments, in terms of the work that we're doing to renew and refresh and make transparent the fiscal incentives framework, that is the kind of predictability that leads to growth. I want to say in closing, sir, that people tend to have old models in their heads about what growth looks like. But the truth is that when you improve your investment climate, when you make it easy for people to live and work and do business, you don't have to focus too specifically on what sectors you are looking to engineer, because people with ideas will come. People with ideas are coming to this country. And why is that? Because confidence is returning, has returned. There are people who every day engages and say, I want to be a part of this new Barbados because I believe that Barbados is going places. Our job is to facilitate that, sir. And that is the plan for growth in this country. And that is the reason that this bill is so important, because it helps to give us the space to be able to spend on the people of Barbados who are going to be able to participate in that growth and that new future for this country. And with those few words, sir, I'm obliged to you.
I'm obliged. Member for St. Michael East.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm reluctant to speak on this topic since it requires human beings of extremely high intelligence.
And we know you have that intelligence.
But I want to contribute based on layman's observations and an ability to listen to the experts on this subject. I also want to place before you an important caveat because I was urged to say a few words about this matter, but I was a bit reluctant for fear that friends sometimes can easily become enemies, although you would like to believe that you're speaking objectively on this subject matter. I know that there's some view that I am strongly opposed to the views of economists, but I am opposed to the views that are boxing, believing that a narrow discipline, like most disciplines, are really disciplines that hold a global embracement of all other disciplines. And I get the impression in modern times that economists believe that when they speak as geologists, they speak as legal minds, they also speak as sociologists, they understand anthropology, astrology, all the different disciplines of the world, so they must rule things. It is not an attempt to inferiorize or derogate the importance of the discipline itself, but is an attempt to ask them to widen their perspective of the world. And that Barbados, as small as we are, intelligence is not monopolized by those who live outside the shores of Barbados. And I don't even want to share the view that was expressed that lots of people be attracted to this country because of ideas that they bring. They can't bring no ideas that we don't have. No country has ideas that we don't have. I believe that we process the ideas based on the social pressures, the dynamics in the society in which we live. I want our people to take charge of their own affairs. I also want our people not to believe that we absolutely can do what we want to do, and to help explain to the people of Barbados that although we would like to be able to assert our manhood, the reality is that we are living in a colonial, a neo-colonial world, and the external pressures are so harsh on us. And you had an example in recent times where we made some adjustments to the taxation policy, and we lower, which if we were truly a sovereign country, when we lower our taxation, we would not have to respond to the guidelines of international institutions, which then turn and classify the lowering of taxation in order to have incentives in attracting people to our lands. We would not have to be faced with the pejorative title of being seen as being blacklisted. And I just want us to be free of how we think. Colonialism is something that we fought from the time we were transported here without being asked to be transported. We are forced migrants working in a dependent economy. I'm not saying that there are not criminals within the economy, because one of the negative elements that cause us to be here is because we have had criminals in governance. And the criminals affect the way we balance or compromise in circumstances, and they have been able to push us back for decades. And they did what they had to do because they believe that they had absolute power, and never respect the mechanism that within 5 years or so, the people will be able to exercise that right to determine if they had absolute power or not. But they had 10 years of criminal activity. Plus, we fighting with colonial impositions every day. They took some of the leading institutions, especially financial institutions, and they did what they had to do. As far back as the first 2 years or so, well, it has to be the first year, which is about 2008, they went to the central bank of this country, took up the taxpayers' money, $10 million, gave it to a company then called Clico, managed by criminals again, with a prime minister who was a criminal as well, and gave it to Clico. Everybody that had a modicum of common sense knew that was throwing a pint of water in the middle of the ocean by fraudulent means. And during that time, men and their wives and children became extremely wealthy in Barbados, while the masses of people walk around involved in a chant, clapping hands and dancing, that there are supporters of an institution called the DLP. And I am not surprised that the honourable member who just spoke, my sister, who just spoke, reflected on that. Because they now have the courage, because they have a perception of black people, their own, not other people, they have a perception of black people that all of them foolish. 11 months ago, the democratic mechanism we put in place to determine whether it should be rejected or not. I am not of the opinion that people vote because they love Trevor Prescott, the representative now of St. Michael's East, is because they didn't want the DLP. It was a rejection vote. Because people don't like criminals when people can't eat. And people stealing all the time. And nobody can't get a crumb from off the table. All that left to the people at that specific time was to take action on May the 24th. And that is what they did. And that is why you had a seat, which is the most important seat of victory on that specific time. The most important seat in my eyes is the seat that we took from them in St. John, which had 2 prime ministers. I don't mind anybody trying to justify that they wanted to keep the environment in its original form, to have these indigenous appearances in it. It was neglect. Nothing was done that was developmental in the community. And what international organizations that we depend on for measurements indicated it was the most backward area in the entire geography of Barbados. And had 2 Barbadian prime ministers. One is perceived as one of the best, if not the best, prime minister you've ever had. Optics. Parking a car on a hill and saying I was among the people. But it is more than that. It is more than that. Look, the lots of things that we have done in order to alter situations, in order to provide the survival that is so necessary. It is a necessity that we stop and think. And that is why when the first argument that was sold in here about homegrown policy, I did not agree with it. It is no homegrown policy, certainly not this man. I am not in that home. The policy was a compromise on an imposition. that came by the IMF and international financial institutions. It is part of a new policy that governments in these dependent states are forced to put in place. And if you want to argue it's the best that we can do with what little we have, within the nature of the powerlessness that exists within us, I can go with you on that. Do you really believe that any government with any social conscience would want to talk about balancing the economy, reducing debt, and then look and see poor people with an average of 5 and 6 children in their homes going home from work? Do you consciously and seriously think that I would believe that you are human if you tell me that this is a reflection of your efficiency and your credibility? That you have to make this recommendation to send home people because things are hard and you have no other choice? Do you really believe that I feel that you have to cut back on workers based on your own initiative? You borrow the people's money. And the people say, this is the terms and conditions on which I lend you. Every day and every night I weep, sir. Literally so. Because I have friends and family that when they put their position to me, I have to find an excuse, and I'm not capable of doing so. What is happening to us? But we have to deal with people who are not using Gatlings or machine guns or any form of modern technology for military purposes in order to keep us in captivity, but they're now using their educational and financial institutions to make sure they keep their subjects in order. But don't tell me that we are doing this because we are bright and efficient. It is not true. You might be bright because you find a balance, a compromise, so that you wouldn't go unduly and put excessive pressures on the people. But how much more can you do? And over the years, what I have witnessed is that when countries try to deal with these issues, the countries find themselves in economic chaos. I've seen it in Jamaica. I've seen it from a political perspective in Grenada. I mean, been seeing it all over. And I am not happy about that. I am not blaming anybody about that. I am blaming those who want to take responsibility for criminal acts, both locally in politics and externally in global politics as well, based on the things that the US government do to us and Europe through the EU. All kind of wicked things after accumulating wealth over the years as a consequence of raping and plundering these countries over and over again. And our people are expecting us to perform miracles when they gave us the support on the 24th of May. They expected us to help people to walk on water. And we now have to face these people out there every day, telling them we will get there. We are not there yet, but in the days, in the interim, between where we are now and where we intend to go, there's going to be severe human sacrifice. You know, I was talking to my colleagues who urged me to say something because they say, not me, they say that they want to hear a different perspective. I was reluctant because in an effort to give another view, which I believe that this parliament so badly needed, because when you get 30 seats and you rejoice at just the figure, there are other things that you have to think about. Sometimes people refuse to give objectivity to the application of judgment. And therefore, it is almost like everybody echoing the voice of some other body. Nobody seems to have any independent judgment. Nobody have had any new experiences. I hear people talk about when they meet colleagues that were working close with them in the trenches. The colleagues are upset. I don't want a journalist on Facebook to tell me that. You only have to be in the East Coast Road or walking through your community in the ghetto or on the Honourable Highway. And I'm glad to see that the Honourable member for St. Andrew recognized the importance of Honourable coming to Parliament as the first black woman in the House of Assembly. Those things mean a lot to me. I would like to believe that at least I now have a colleague that I know respect the things that I say. I also told him.
You don't believe?
That's my belief. I can't give it short. But I also told him that he too. And I'm not judging him for what the member of St. Michael's East thinks about him. But I want him to know that every time people send you back to Parliament, regardless of what other people were saying or what people are saying now, it is a testimony of the confidence that they have in you. And if you are not judged based and given the rewards based on the people's judgment, well, then I would have to come to the conclusion, like most people who think negatively, that people are ignorant. And I'm not going to share that view. I believe that you have made a major contribution to the general development of Barbados. I am hoping that you will also defy a lot of prophets who want to predict your future, sir. Let the people determine that. Do not be guided by age. You just have to, I'm not going to recommend that to you. Don't be governed by age or anything like that. Like the work plan.
Yes.
The work plan.
Yes,
The work plan. The work plan, sir, it has caused us to make some alterations. I don't know if some people even believe that it is by a man named Burke, but I don't got to be full Burke. But in my view, sir, I am not going to blame, and I am honest with the Barbadian public, I am not going to blame the Barbados Labour Party, the party to which I belong, the party to which I respect, the party who I believe by some divine intervention is here at this point in history because we are the institution that is responsible for rescuing the people. And I said it before, there are times in history where we saw changes. Then my changes might not always be on par with what we're thinking here now, but there are times in history great people emerge. I personally believe that, and I don't even want to describe it, but it's the most simple way that I can. The leader of this party has reached almost movie star status, sir. Not because of simple cosmetic reasons. But because it's like, I don't want to say if she's an agent of the divine, and people gather around her. The expectations of her, they are extremely high. And in my view, sometimes they go beyond human capacity to rescue every human being in this country and in the diaspora. Expect her to make the fundamental changes in an environment that is hostile to the general development of small states. And respond for the environment. And in terms of statistics, the figures, we make a very narrow contribution to the climate change across the world. But we have the biggest responsibility, because the reality is that we'll be hurt first, more so than the others. I have actually urged the Minister of Maritime Affairs and all the other ministers that are involved to understand the kind of responsibility which we have, because we're dealing with the ignorance of a Donald Trump, a man who believes that he can plant leadership across the Caribbean, and that includes the Bolivarian Republic. A man who believes that he can say what he likes, even about climate change. And that's what I'm talking about, external factors. Exogenous material and entities who want to dictate what we do in this country, what rules and regulations and laws that we can pass in relation to our own freedom to think and our own freedom to use a legal instrument that can contribute to our development. And we find ourselves in a so-called sovereign democratic state having to be involved in compromise politics. Compromise politics. Many of us, we are forced to do what we don't want to do. Don't mind all this, look, scholarship is important. Don't mind what social commentators out there saying. Some of the people who criticizing this government can't make a box cart. Some of them can't run the tray of a vendor that only got in 2 items, akis and plums. Nothing complex. The only thing they might be able to manage a post office that probably bear a 5-cent stamp and a 10-cent stamp. But if they get anything with $4.16 and subtract it from a $20 US, they got to go for machines and call about 17 people before they get back change. But they understand how to manage an economy. All of a sudden, people that never was so bright at school, they can see the reports. They understand political science. They're economists. All these things we have to face with. And we are supposed to deliver. I believe that we are capable of delivering. But what I don't like is I am not going to accept any responsibility for the hardships that we are forced to inflict on brothers and sisters, not based on any ancestral foundations alone, but direct blood relations. Sometimes you're in a position where you have to give priority to a friend over your brother, because you don't want to appear to be involved in nepotism. This is the environment that we live in. Or you don't want to find yourself in a situation where you've got to argue to eternity that because of some special skills that somebody possesses, you believe that they're the person's best fit for the job. And you have to give the job to somebody in the environment, sometimes that probably might got qualities totally inferior to another person. Don't be impressed by a man who you said was overcharging the state overnight by millions and thousands of dollars. And then the man comes to the table and says, I'm going to make a little adjustment in price. Something cost $10,000. A man charges in this economy, he call you a smart businessman. He has the commercial acumen to be able to put things in place in such a way that he knows how to make profit or he knows how to manage. And in many cases, the man inflates prices. But when he sees the whole kingdom going to collapse, he comes back and tells him, we deflated here now. So he comes back now and tells you, I was charging you 10,000 before, I will now do it for you for 250. I mean, you don't think? You don't think? You don't understand what man was at 10,000 and you now come back and do it for 250? And you say he sacrificed. Sacrifice what? He was poking out your eyes all the time. And you see that you now get a glimpse of the truth. Yes. Or somebody who was not a beneficiary to the little maneuvering that went on. Gets kid out, you ain't got the partner in this contraband activity. So he now comes and want to play, he's no human. You now see the eyes of the master and he asks him for forgiveness. So all of a sudden now, you get a discount. He get a discount. Everybody invited me to the parties. Let's party in the Ivy. Let's party with my friends. We want to go over there, look and see what we're talking with. And my people. And I know these are the people who educate me every day. Every day. Because I don't want to, as the former Prime Minister said, I want to leave anybody behind. So don't be fooled by the agents of the external principles who doing the same thing that their principal do overseas in international trade. The same models that apply in international trade are inflating prices way beyond the service and the commodities that they are offering. It's the same principle that they apply at all times.
Member has 3 minutes more.
I am, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am extremely grateful for the time that you have given me, including the 3 minutes. But we are in a new world. I want you, all of us, to see us as a new world. Radical changes must be made. It's a new world order. Thank you, Representative St. Thomas. A new world order. Radical changes must be made. If we do not make the radical changes, we will pay the price. All the restructuring and the reforming, the changes has to be made here. It is not an academic exercise because the transport workers want to hear something innovative. And if the Prime Minister says to them that we are going to transfer ownership to people who are now drivers and employees, and you're going to make them owners and employers, they just want to hear a comprehensive program. And we can't delay. We have to move swiftly to make it happen. If we cannot employ people in some circumstances, but a void is there where we can have contractual relationships with people, and that the state must no longer take the load, and those people have contractual relationships, we've got to make sure that we open up opportunities for ordinary people, at least to get subcontracts and all kinds of things. Right? Because we have to deal now with equity and a distribution of the resources of this country. I am not supportive of any individual or any institution that wants us to take the blame for what is happening in this society. I mean, more and more, look, education must undergird the wisdom that we share with our people across Barbados. It must be explained, because we have distortionists going around telling people over and over again, you see the Barbados Labour Party fool you? You see the people fool you? You get put out of work. They were critical of you all along. They had promised the paradise and the promised land. They promised you that you will walk on water, and now you can't even get water. And the representatives of St. Andrew and St. Joseph and all these people would have been experiencing that. I want us to become conscious that if we do not send the messages out to the masses of people across Barbados of how tough this opportunity is, of this moment in history is for all of us, ministers of finance, ministers of economic affairs, ministers of the environment, ministers of agriculture. All of these changes, we are in the midst of climate change. And the Minister of Agriculture has to play a role as well. The Minister of Energy has to be dealing with all kinds of chemicals and emissions and fossil fuel challenges and alternative forms of energy. I want to take the opportunity to thank you very much for making the Ivy the first example of what we can do in the community centers across Barbados. I was saying that we were talking a lot about the challenges that we are facing from climate change. And we are talking about a lot of ideas and interacting on the international stage, a lot of poetry, senseless one. But you were able to put a program together to execute an element that serves as a form of mitigation, an alternative form. He introduced the photovoltaic system in the Ivy last week, complemented by about 6 large batteries. And he explained to me an area which I was totally ignorant of. He said to me, if the sunlight goes down for 3 days as a result of bad weather or rain, the excessive energy goes into the batteries, and the batteries store the electricity there, and I can still have current. If tomorrow morning I have any challenges in my community, and I had a blackout completely, or Barbados Light Power had an issue that had a national blackout, or if we had a hurricane storm, whatever, I can assure the people in the Ivy House in there that as long as the architecture and the construction in that center can stand up to the challenges, they have a place that they can go to and enjoy comfort. And that's what I'm talking about. The restructuring program all across Barbados, sir, I don't understand the necessity of it, but I know that members, including the economic fraternity, I know that they spend lots of nights and lots of days trying to find the alternative model that is so necessary. So I just want to keep re-emphasizing, I'm not critical of it, I'm not critical of the discipline, but I expect more. I expect them to expand. And I expect them that every element that they highlight, they can also give me the social implications of the element that they put into place. I understand the importance of economics, but I also understand the importance of political economy. And that when you come to these corridors, it's not about being an economist, it's about understanding political economy, the social benefits from any adjustments we are making. Mr. Deputy Chairman, thank you very much for enduring the punishment that came from you.
You're welcome. Member for
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that the sitting be suspended for lunch until 2 p.m.
Seconded? Seconded, please. Question is that there will be no suspended for lunch until 2 p.m. today. All members in favor say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. This House is now suspended until 2 p.m. today.